Welcome back. The constitutionally stipulated tenure of Justice Walter Onnoghen as Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria comes to an end on Friday, February 10. But it's not yet clear if President Muhammadu Buhari will forward his name to the Senate for confirmation as the substantive head of the nation's judiciary. In this next report, we look at some of the reactions trailing the issue.
On the 6th of October 2016, in line with the provision of the 1999 Constitution, the National Judicial Council (NJC) recommended Justice Walter Onnoghen to President Muhammadu Buhari as a successor to Justice Mahmood Mohammed, whose tenure was to expire on November 9, 2016. In a radical departure from what obtained in the past, the President did not send the recommendation to the Senate for confirmation. On November 10, 2016, the President instead appointed Justice Walter Onnoghen to the office in an acting capacity.
I have my very serious doubt. If the President can do without forwarding that name of the person so recommended under Section 231(1) to the Senate, I might be wrong, but this is my own position, that does the President has his choice?
My own position is that whatever the government may be doing, whatever investigations the government may be conducting, everything must be done to avoid having a constitutional crisis, because an acting Chief Justice under Section 231 of the Constitution cannot act for more than 3 months. So I expect that the government will make up its mind before before the duration of the appointment.
With just few days to the end of the 3 months tenure, a lack of information from the President and clarity on what would happen next has heightened speculations and generated much debate in the public. The chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Issa Sage, says this is needless.
I am not in the presidency, and I can't tell you everything that I know. But I want to say this. Someone might have made mistakes in the past. I'm talking hypothetically. I'm not even referring to the highly respected Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, for whom I have the greatest respect. I'm not talking about. Someone might have made mistakes in the past, and the President can say, okay, we know if you've made mistakes in the past, let's stay there, let's observe and see how you are going to perform. He has the right to do that. Unlike what Olanipekun was trying to say in his articles, that the President is a rubber stamp. He's not a rubber stamp. The President is the appointer. He appoints. All the others are recommendation. NJC recommends to him. He can reject. He can postpone. And as he did in this case, he did not reject, but he allowed the time for appointment of a new person to lapse and appointed an acting Chief Justice. He has the power to do that. The Senate also has the power to reject. So I think the whole process that we are seeing now is that of proper vetting, proper studying, and so on. And I really think this country should allow the process to be complete without all this hysteria, blackmail, frenzy everywhere.
In a bid to douse the growing tension, however, Justice Walter Onnoghen, in a statement signed by his media aide, has asked Nigerians to give President Buhari a free hand to perform his constitutional duty concerning his confirmation as the substantive head of the judiciary. While appreciating Nigerians for their support to him, Justice Onnoghen distanced himself from those individuals and groups issuing threats and ultimatums to the President on the issue of his confirmation. Justice Walter Onnoghen was called to the Nigerian bar 38 years ago. He was appointed as a judge of the Cross River State Judiciary in 1989, and in 1999 he was elevated to the Court of Appeal, where he spent 7 years. In 2005, he became a justice of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Justice Walter Onnoghen will end his career on the bench when he clocks 70 in the year 2020.
And just before we go, let's do a quick recap of some of the top trending stories in the news.
We begin in the UK, where the convicted former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, is facing charges bordering on the confiscation of his assets said to be worth about £250 million. On Friday, the 3rd of February, Mr. Ibori appeared before Justice David Tomlinson of the Southwark Crown Court, London. Mr. Ibori was recently released from Bedford Prison on December 21st, 2016, after being in jail since 2012. The 57-year-old was jailed for using UK financial institutions to launder hundreds of millions of pounds sterling he stole from the public treasury in Delta State while serving as governor. Back here in Nigeria, the federal government has again applied to the Federal High Court in Abuja for a secret trial and protection of witnesses that will testify against the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, in the case of unlawful possession of firearms and money laundering brought against him. The fresh application, which is filed by the prosecutor, Mr. Oladipo Okpesheyi, urged the court to try the former National Security Advisor in secret and also protect the witnesses by not allowing their names and addresses to be made public in the course of the trial. But the defendant turned down the request and instead asked the court to dismiss the government's application on the ground that it lacks merit and constituted a gross abuse of court process. Justice Rahmat Mohammed has fixed March the 1st for hearing of the motion. And in the case of corruption made against a judge of the Federal High Court, Justice Adeni Ademola, 3 prosecution witnesses have given accounts of how 30 million naira was allegedly transferred from the corporate account of a senior lawyer, Mr. Joe Agi, into the personal account of Mrs. Olabowale, the wife of Justice Adeni Ademola. The first witness at the proceedings, Mrs. Fatima Sani, in her testimony says Justice Ademola demanded 25 million naira from her through a proxy, while her husband, Dr. Sani Shaibu, a former director of pension accounts in the office of the head of service, was standing trial before him in the case of the missing 5.7 billion naira pension funds. 2 other witnesses from Zenith and GT banks also testified on the financial transactions between Mr. Joe Agi and Mrs. Ademola. After taking the testimonies of the 3 prosecution witnesses, Justice Jude Okeke adjourned the case to the 8th, 9th and 10th of February. The prosecution on the spot has, however, given an indication that he has 6 more witnesses to call in order to prove his case against the defendants. Staying in Abuja, a high court has ruled that plans by the Federal Capital Territory Authority to demolish houses in Mpape, a shanty settlement in the FCT without recourse to due process, is illegal. Justice Abubakar Kutigi, who handed down the judgment, says government cannot demolish the settlement until it has fully complied with the law. The Federal Capital Territory Authority had in July of 2012 earmarked about 50,000 houses for demolition, giving the residents just a month notice to relocate on the grounds that the settlement was not in the Abuja master plan. This prompted the residents to approach the court, first with an application to stop the demolition, which was dismissed in 2012, and then with a substantive suit seeking to stop the demolition. And we'll round off with the appeal of the Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Justice Ishaq Bello, to the executive for an increase in funding of the judiciary to ensure a more effective implementation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. At the presentation of the draft strategy for the effective implementation, Justice Bello says an increase in funding of the judiciary will lead to the employment of more judges, which is necessary to ease the tension of most Nigerian judges, who he says are already being overworked, a situation which slows down the speedy dispensation of justice.
That's the program for today. Please send in any questions or comments about the program and indeed any area of the law. You can watch this episode again or even past ones on our YouTube channel. I'm Shola Shuyeli. Thank you for watching.